I want to then move from this point to a more personal level. And this is the question I ask all the time. Okay, what very personally is required of us? This is the big picture I'm sharing with you tonight, but what very personally is required of us? And many of our great moral teachers tell us that we need to work on our compassion, we need to work on our forgiveness. Yeah, that's good. But what good are those if we aren't also working on our courage, on our boldness? And that's not mentioned enough. And here's how I see it. We evolved in tightly knit tribes where the most frightening thing of all was to separate from the pack, to separate from the tribe. But what's happening is that the hyper tribe is heading over Victoria Falls, right? So we've got to separate. But it still brings up fear, even though we know what we've got to do. To separate from the dominant pack can still make our stomach go into knots, because we have to do things that don't necessarily feel comfortable, to articulate a very different way of being in the world and to stand up for it. And so I've come to call what we need, I call it bold humility. I call it bold humility. By that I mean we need to work on our courage, and so we have to rethink courage. We have to rethink fear, that boldness is not the absence of fear. It's learning that fear can be seen simply as an energy source. It's that flutter that can say, okay, I'm right where I should be. I'm feeling a little fearful. Yay for me. So I have a little cheesy trick that I came up with several years ago when I was in an awkward situation, and I knew I had to get my hand up, but I knew I would be separating from my pack that was on the same row in this auditorium. And so my heart was going like that, and I decided to reframe it as, oh, I used to say, you wimp. I reframed it as, oh, inner applause. And it kind of works most of the time, some of the time. But so the boldness part of it is just say, okay, fear is okay. We can do this. And the humility part is simply recognizing that it's not possible to know what's possible, but I want to get to that in just a moment, because what it means to me is that, okay, I just want to be really simple here. There are three places where I think we've got to exercise that boldness. And that means exercising boldness to really commit to what I like to call is living democracy. That we recognize consciously that we are in a process of creating this very different way of understanding democracy as inclusion, as mutual accountability, and fairness. And that means that, like it or not, we've got to get money out of the system. We've got to believe that we can take money out of our political system as a driving force. And we just got to do it. And so here is this is my US hero, that smiling face there. She has every reason to have that little, just took the cookie out of the cookie jar smile. That is my superhero, Deb Simpson, who, because regular people stood up in the state of Maine, they got public financing. Deb started as a waitress in a diner in a small town in Maine, but her friends saw leadership in Deb, and they encouraged her to run for office. And she said, what? I can't do that. I don't have money. They said, Deb, we have public financing in Maine. So she did. She ran for office. She was elected. She helped pass historic environmental legislation against the huge onslaught of corporate spending, because the legislators like Deb Simpson could listen to their constituencies, not corporate advertising and pressure. So we've got to move, we've got to go for it, and that's one of the things, no matter what our issues are, we can keep one finger on that, and move it, and whatever is happening in this country, to support it. It's the mother of all the issues that we're concerned about here. And the second thing that I think that is absolutely critical to focus on is, and I know that you're way ahead in many ways of us, but to really believe that we can create political parties that listen to us, that respond to us, that are accountable to us. And so I was so struck at what happened in Brazil in the 1980s, when there was no party that was listening at all to the populace. And yet people came together in social movements and created the Workers' Party, then elected a president, President Lula, in a decade ago, and were able then to take an example that I learned about. Thank you, Debbie Field, if you're here. I learned about because of Debbie. My daughter and I went to Brazil and saw firsthand what could happen when officials are elected who make food a human right. That means zero hunger, and we were able to be there and to document ourselves and see, including these little kids here, benefiting from this great citizen mobilization that led to making the goal of food as a human right, and that have reduced infant mortality in Brazil by almost half in about 10 years. So it is an enormous achievement, happened because citizens actually moving effectively together. And here are some of the beneficiaries. And creating living democracy means that we create new forms of direct citizen engagement. And I've just listed a few of them here that include, of course, the food policy councils that Canada has taken such leadership in. Thank you, Wayne Roberts, certainly. And it includes citizens' juries, like you're seeing here in Mali, where people are debating what kind of agriculture they want in Mali. Regular people from all walks of life debating that. One other example I'll just call out here is from India. One of the most amazing things I learned in writing EcoMind is that in India, there are now 10 million households engaged in forest management groups. It's the democratization of forest protection, devolving authority from the central government into small groups in the villages, 10 million households involved. And it is one of the reasons that India is a country that is actually improving its forest cover and forest health. And I must add that the expert who led me to this, Beena Agarwal, said in her beautiful book about it that it is for women to have at least 2 or 3 places in the leadership group that this is working. So the gender balance and the contribution of women is critical to these participatory forms of living democracy. So here we are then, and here we are back to courage. And I will just note here that the EcoMind tells us, that we are co-creating each other moment to moment. Our brains are literally being changed by the thoughts and images that we expose ourselves to. And I know that I'm associated with eating a good food diet, but I want to also be advocate of a news diet that feeds our sense of possibility, that feeds our bold humility. And one way of doing that is by having one's own, if you will, lodestars of courage. And for a long time now, since Anna and I went to Kenya in the year 2000, Wangari Maathai has been my lodestar of courage. We all need these people and carrying them with us day to day. Wangari planted 7 trees on Earth Day in 1977. She planted 7 trees on Earth Day. If I had heard about that, I would have thought, oh, that's nice, Wangari. I hope that the women you honored with those trees are really appreciative. Well, she withstood beatings, withstood jailings multiple times to create the Greenbelt movement and a village women-led movement for tree planting that grew to 45 million trees. And then Wangari got the call from Sweden that she'd won the Nobel Peace Prize. So with that standing, she hooked up with the UN Environmental Program, and they started the Plant for the Planet. They set the goal of 1 billion trees a year around the world. And when I read that, I thought, oh, I was still back in the, oh yeah, right. You know where we are now? 11 billion trees. So we lost Wangari in September, but we have not lost that courage hero. So find your courage heroes, hang out with them, marry them if you can. Get as close as you possibly can. Bring them up as your children to be more courageous than you. In other words, we become what we associate with. If we want more courage in our lives, we must hang out with it and do that which we thought we could not do. And so what I'm saying is that from the EcoMind, and this is what Wangari symbolizes to me, it is truly not possible to know what's possible. And just think how freeing that is. It's not possible to know what's possible. So we're liberated to go for the world we want. And thank you, this beautiful city, this beautiful night. Thank you so much. Thank you.